XRP on Coinbase has reportedly dropped by about 90% as big holders pull coins off the exchange. Less supply on the shelf can make every buy hit harder. This is what we call a liquidity crunch, a supply crunch. And I'll show you what changed, how it happened, we're going to verify it, and the charts that I'm looking at before the next move. Now, while this is happening, at the same time, Wall Street is circling at a new angle as BlackRock is exploring bringing ETFs on chain. We know Larry Fink has been a huge proponent of tokenization, but now things are getting serious as there are more doorways for traditional money to enter the crypto space through blockchain. There's also chatter about listings tied to altcoin ETFs at the DTCC, and we'll connect those dots and what they could mean for XRP moving forward, especially as we're about to get a spot ETF. And the market's not slowing down as we've seen 18 straight weeks with more stocks hitting new all-time highs than new lows, something that hasn't happened since the peak in 2021. And I get it, many people might look at this as a signal that the top is in, but remember, people and markets are extremely greedy, and more often than not, these rallies run longer than you would expect. As the old saying goes, markets can remain irrational longer than you can remain solvent. So any rational player or someone who's been involved in a few bear markets by now would look at this and say, I need to start selling. But I don't think you want to start selling too soon. Now, this is all happening just a day or two before that major Fed decision surrounding interest rates. And as we covered in our last video, since 1980, if the Fed cut rates while the markets were at new all-time highs or within 2% of those all-time highs, 100% of the times in history this has occurred, markets have been higher 12 months later. And maybe that's exactly what major investors in the crypto market are preparing for, as there has been a multi-billion-dollar Bitcoin buy ahead of all of these macro scenarios. In other words, accumulation just saw its second largest inflow in 2025, which is extremely bullish for Bitcoin, extremely bullish for XRP, and the entire crypto market. So I'll be breaking down why this matters for the whole crypto space and what I'm looking for next. And finally, Ripple dropped a fresh piece on stablecoins this week, which separates the solid stablecoins from the shaky ones. And listen, there are so many stablecoins that are entering the space now. What is going to be the key difference between the ones that last and then suck up all of that institutional liquidity and the ones who kind of just fizzle out? So stick around till the end, and I'm going to walk you through the exchange supply story, the Wall Street move, the ETF listing buzz, whale activity, and obviously the charts on XRP. And as always, my friend, if you're feeling blessed and bullish, comment 777. And if you're going to be the wealthiest person in your family tree, smash the subscribe button. Hello and welcome back to the Bull Runners YouTube channel. If you're new here, my name is Paul, and you can find me on Twitter or X at PauliDeFi, PauliEDEFI. We have an article directly from Jack McDonald, who's the Senior Vice President of Stablecoins over at Ripple. And yes, the RLUSD stablecoin is arguably one of the most compliant, transparent, and has done all of the hard groundwork in order to be one of the top contenders and choices for major banks and institutions moving forward by getting all sorts of licensing even throughout the United States and New York. And the reality is not all stablecoins are built the same, because as regulatory clarity increases and infrastructure matures, a growing number of companies are exploring stablecoin issuance, from banks and payment providers to consumer platforms and fintech firms. It seems like everyone has launched their stablecoin after seeing just how profitable Tether has been as a company, outperforming even BlackRock with only 100 employees. From that perspective, who wouldn't want in? Even WorldFi, Trump's team decided to launch a stable coin. So the appeal is obvious: faster settlement, lower transaction costs, and programmable financial tools. But as more stablecoins enter the market, it's becoming clear that not all are built to the same standards. And so the major difference between the majority of these stablecoins and a key player like Ripple is that Ripple's been in the game for quite some time. They've been through the regulatory ringer. They've been sued by the SEC and won. They have one of the best world-class teams in place to service the needs of major institutions and clients. And so launching a stablecoin, although it's attractive now, very similar to the ICO craze of 2018 when anyone could launch a token on the Ethereum blockchain, many will get rich really quickly on the revenues of that stablecoin, but very few will last. And I can't tell you how many of those tokens are no longer a thing today. Being in that space at the time, I thought everything was going to continue to do well, and we found out the hard way that that is just not true. Well, the stablecoin market is far more mature, and yes, it is here to stay, but very few will win in the long term. In other words, launching a stablecoin means entering the realm of compliance, liquidity provisioning, risk management, interoperability, and launching a stablecoin also calls for transparent and auditable reserves alongside rigorous regulatory alignment, standards that are essential for earning trust and achieving lasting adoption, which again, very few stablecoins will be able to do, which is what differentiates the RLUSD stablecoin versus the majority of other stablecoins that will enter the space or have already entered the space. And so you can see that there are tons of stablecoins already operable in the crypto markets, but many of these have very small market caps and arguably won't do too well in the long run. Whereas the RLUSD stablecoin has consistently been gaining in market cap, still under $1 billion, but I thoroughly expect it to likely outperform a player like PayPal in the long run, potentially even die, and then get up into that top 3 to 4 spot over time, which will create an environment where a lot of these flows will run on the XRPL, and the underlying token for that entire ecosystem is XRP. So anyone who's going to want to do business with the RLUSD stablecoin will have to buy and hold XRP just for fees alone, but more often than not, that liquidity will find its way into many tokens in that ecosystem. So XRP is going to be a large beneficiary of a lot of these flows from the RLUSD stablecoin. Now, it seems investors do know something, as both Bitcoin and XRP are seeing quite interesting situations with their inflows and outflows. Even XRP supply on Coinbase, who is headed by Brian Armstrong, has collapsed 90% as whales move tokens off exchange. Now, again, the reason they would be on the exchange is to trade, for buying and selling. But when they move off exchange, it's more likely a scenario where they simply want to add to liquidity, earn yield or interest on their XRP, and ultimately hold the token because they believe the price is going to be higher in the future than it is right now. They're not taking it to market to sell. So with less liquidity, a super squeeze could be brewing. And I had to double verify this because at the end of the day, a lot of people say a lot of things all over Twitter and X, and it's very hard to know whether or not it's true. But then when I asked Grok to do a bit more digging and even did the on-chain analytics myself, this seems to be true, as Coinbase held about 970 million XRP across 52 cold wallets in June. Then by mid-September, only 6 wallets are remaining active on Coinbase, each holding around 16.5 million XRP, totaling about 99 million XRP. This calculates to an 89.8% drop, aligning closely with the 90% figure. In other words, there is potential that we're going to experience a liquidity crunch, a supply squeeze. And when this occurs and the demand increases with less supply available, the price can skyrocket because people are bidding higher and higher and higher in order to accumulate or buy the XRP. And when FOMO happens, when a lot of people want it and very few people can get it, they're willing to pay extraordinary prices for each individual XRP. So this is the type of stuff where tokens can hit prices that people thought previously unbelievable, and at the end of the day, it doesn't make sense when the market cap's so high, but that's how liquidity works. Now, I'm not saying this thing's going to hit $100 on this supply squeeze. I really don't know, but realistically, I think a $10 prediction would be very serious in the case of a major bull market move through the end of the year. And so when you combine this type of a scenario with the fact that Bitcoin is also seeing its largest inflow to accumulation addresses. These are addresses that are known not to sell, just using on-chain analytics, and instead buy and hold. This is the second largest time that has happened, and this is happening directly before the Fed's rate decision because, again, many people are extremely bullish on this scenario, and the entire crypto market is a risk-on asset class. It does sell off hard in bear markets, and in bull markets, it pumps way harder than everything else. Well, this marks the second largest single-day inflow of the year. The transaction executed OTC is valued at approximately $3.4 billion. And here we have the charts to verify and confirm. You can see that we saw the second right here, right before we pop back off to a new all-time high. And we're not going to dive too much into those charts, but again, another very bullish scenario. Then combine that with the fact that market breadth is improving and that the NYSE stocks on both NYSE and NASDAQ are hitting new 52-week highs. Now, here's the thing. A lot of people might mistakenly assume because they've been wrecked before or they've been through a bear market before that you need to be selling when everyone is buying. The problem is sometimes that buying lasts longer than you expect due to greed. And so really you're just selling the breakout instead of a range that is far higher above the prior all-time highs because of fear. You're afraid of getting wrecked again. But what I found is into new all-time highs, you want to hold for longer than you think. Now, there have been 18 consecutive weeks now with more new highs than new lows, which is the longest streak since 2021. Again, this can put a little bit of fear in your average investor. But for me, this is actually quite exciting because this leads me to believe that into the end of the year, we are truly going to get a crazy rally in the stock market and in crypto. Furthermore, 60% of the S&P's 500 components are now trading above their 200-day moving average, nearly the highest share since December of 2024. In other words, bullish momentum is incredibly strong, and this has been with a very negative backdrop surrounding wars in the Middle East, surrounding wars in Eastern Europe, surrounding all of the FUD when it came to Trump tariffs and just how bad inflation was going to be, surrounding that jobs revision, unemployment climbing, and the list goes on. Truly, this is one of the most resilient markets in history, and none of the top indicators are flashing, which leads me to believe I still want to be bullish. And then institutional adoption is also ramping up as BlackRock weighs ETF tokenization, and JP Morgan Chase, the largest bank in the nation and one of the largest banks in the world that isn't centralized, is excited about this shift. Now, BlackRock, the world's largest asset manager, is reportedly exploring ways to tokenize ETFs on the blockchain, following the strong performance of its spot Bitcoin ETFs, also one of the fastest growing in history, and their tokenizing ETFs could potentially allow them to trade beyond standard market hours and be used as collateral in all sorts of DeFi applications. Now, if you're a student with Altcoin Pro University, we show you how to take advantage of these types of yields all the freaking time. For example, we have one here on SUI versus the US dollar, which is actually pretty safe. That would earn you 17% APR. Now imagine, that's not always going to be sustainable. It's not always going to be there. They're variable. They go up and down over time. But if you took advantage of this every once per week, 2 times per week, very similar to what the banks want to do, they just don't have access to this yet because we didn't have regulation around stablecoins and the world of decentralized finance. They eventually want to access yields like this. This is stuff that we cover directly inside of altcoinpro.com, where you can put your crypto to work, or you can add into a 5x loop and earn 26% APY on a Solana pool. So in other words, if you hold Solana or SUI or USDC, it doesn't really matter. What matters is that you put your crypto to work for you in one of these DeFi yields. And yes, we show you step by step how to take advantage of these and do them. Many of our members actually get their entire membership paid for when it's $97 a month because they have more crypto in these pools that earn them that interest and yield, which means everything else is a free ride, whether it's our courses, our classes, our live calls, which I'm going to host very soon here today to show you technical analysis, altcoin picks, and the list goes on. We are probably the best crypto education platform and community on the planet, bar none. And if you don't believe that, in 14 days, ask for your money back. If you can't take advantage of that DeFi yield pool, it's no worries. If it's not what you expected, it's no worries. But at least check it out because we have one of the highest retentions for a reason. People truly love this platform, and this is the one thing that could help you become a crypto millionaire. Now, diving further into this article, BlackRock already owns, through their Biddle fund, all sorts of cryptos like Ethereum, Avalanche, Aptos, Polygon, and other blockchains, and it's likely that they are going to launch an XRP spot ETF here in the near future alongside all of these other major players. Now, JP Morgan has called tokenization a significant leap for the $7 trillion money market fund industry, pointing to the initiative launched by Goldman Sachs, Bank of New York Mellon, which BlackRock will join at launch. So these are probably some of the biggest players in the entire global financial space, and even they are excited about tokenization. So imagine all of this tokenization is going to need what? Stable coins. And stable coins directly from Ripple are not only compliant in the United States, but are fully backed one for one by US dollar reserves. So they are going to take advantage of that Genius Act, which will be held at some of these banks that we just mentioned, reputable US banks, and issued in accordance with the New York Department of Financial Services, or the NYDFS. So this is going to open the money market up to 24/7 trading. It's going to be transparent. There's going to be faster settlement. There's going to be lower fees. There's no reason the entire traditional financial market is not going to be modernized using blockchain, stablecoins, and tokenization. And truly, I can think of very few players in the space that are prepared to take advantage of this wave in terms of their expertise, in terms of the quality of their team, in terms of the quality of their services, the fact that they have their own blockchain as well established, which would be none other than Ripple. And yes, Ripple shares privately inside of their investor pool have been getting bought up for higher prices because they know what comes next. So that said, we recently broke above this descending wedge or resistance right here, where we saw the all-time high come in at around $3.66, and I'll increase the size of that. Then we saw resistance in August, and yet again end of August, before bottoming out somewhere around $2.73. Since that point in time, we broke above the descending wedge and resistance and have now put in a new higher high for the first time above our prior high, and are being supported at the 10 and 20 EMA with one bullish engulfing candle, which will close here in a few hours. So if we close anything above the $3 range, things are going to be looking quite good for us to move up to that next range of resistance, which will be somewhere around 335. But in the case of any major event or news surrounding an ETF, or just the market looks extra bullish with all of that Bitcoin demand and buy pressure, this thing could soar right through into its prior all-time high, and a break above that all-time high will easily take us to probably $4 to $5, but eventually by end of year, I'm expecting closer to like $10. And the reason I'm citing these big round numbers is because truly nobody knows where the price is going to go. You just have to watch it closely for strength or weakness. $5 is going to be a psychological resistance, or a place where many players are already really rich that will want to take profits. The next major one is going to be like $10, right? A $10 XRP, double digits. People are going to want to take some profit, which is going to create a bit of sell pressure. That's just the reality of markets. But I believe the demand is far greater than the supply, and that is proven even with the Coinbase supply, which was recently ripped off exchanges. And so we are truly gearing up for an insane end to the year. And if you want to stay up to date on all of it, and you want to be on these live calls and get your questions answered with me live, or any one of our other pros and experts through one of our weekly calls, then head on over to Altcoin Pro to get access to everything and more. You won't regret it, and you really have nothing to lose. But with that said, be sure to subscribe to the channel, leave this video a like if you learned something new, and I will see you in the next one. Goodbye.